a gigantic serpentine creature. The creature came up from behind the planet, briefly disappeared, and then triumphantly reappeared by burrowing through the helpless star. Welcome horror buffs to your ultimate destination for a heavy dose of bone-chilling encounters that will make your heart race and skin crawl uncontrollably. Are you ready for an intense rush of fear and thrill like never before? Then let's dive straight into the stories. The story was posted by Unalloyed Saint Trina on r/nosleep. Ouroboros, or a Warning. April 25th, 1972. Nora. What do you think it means, Nora? Sam choked out, gaze fixated on the cryptic mural that adorned the stone wall in front of them. Unable to suppress a reflexive eye roll, I instead shielded his ego by pivoting my head to the right, away from Sam and the mural. My focus wandered to the gnawing pain in my ankles from the prolonged hike, to the iridescent shimmer of sunlight bouncing off the lake 20 feet below the cliff face we were standing on, finally landing on the relaxing warmth of sunlight radiating across my shoulders. It made for a lovely fall afternoon. The soft wind through my hair and faint birdsong in the distance coaxed some patience out of me. And I returned to the conversation. Well, I think there could be multiple interpretations. How does it strike you? I beseeched. My sole desire was for him to try. I wanted him to give me something stimulating to work with. Granted, the mosaic was a bit of an oddity. I understood how Sam would need time to mull it over. The expansive design started at our feet and continued a few meters above our heads, and it was 3 times wider than it was tall. Positioned in front of the bottom right corner, I slowly scanned the entire piece, taking my time to appreciate its craftsmanship while I waited for his answer. Despite a labor-intensive canvas of uneven alabaster stone, the work was immaculate. As smooth and blemishless as any framed watercolor I'd ever curated at the gallery. Despite the notoriously clumsy medium of chalk, the artist created a hauntingly precise and elaborate piece. And those were just the mechanistic details. The operational details were even more perplexing. For example, how did the mystery artist find and select this space for their illustration? Sam knew of the serene hideaway from his childhood, tucked away and kept secret by the location being a 30-minute detour from the nearest established trail. Upon discovery, Sam and his boyhood friends named this refuge the Giant's Stairs, as the dominant feature of the area was a series of rocky platforms with steep drop-offs. From a distance, they could certainly look like massive steps if you tilted your head at exactly the right angle. Knowing where to drop down would allow you to safely navigate each of the 5 stairs, as the differences in elevations changed depending on your horizontal position on the stairs. At some points, the distance reached a very negotiable 5 feet, while at others, it extended to a more daunting 12 or 15 feet. This was excluding the last drop-off. Safely descending that last step proved impossible. Between the 90-degree incline and the larger overall distance to the terrain below, Sam and his friends had no choice but to find a safe but circuitous hill that more evenly connected the landmarks, rather than going straight from step to lake. There weren't even nearby trees to jump over to and shimmy your way down to the body of water, which was also far enough away from that last stair to make leaping into it impossible. Even as I peered over the edge now, there were no obvious shortcuts to the lake. The nearest tree fell toward the opposite side of the last stair, leaving the closest landing pad for a free fall to be a decaying bramble of jagged, upturned roots. In all the summers he spent at the Giant's Stairs, Sam would later tell me, he could count on one hand the number of trespassers he and his friends had witnessed pass through the area. Besides the site's obscurity, another baffling element existed. A severe storm recently impacted the area, ceasing only 12 hours prior. This meant the entire piece had been erected in the last half day. Confoundingly, we hadn't passed a soul on the way in, and there were no tools or ladders near the mural suggesting the artist was there lately. No signature on the work either, which, from the perspective of a gallery owner, was the most damningly peculiar piece of the mystery. With art of this caliber, one would expect the creator to have plastered their name or brand across the whole contemptible thing. So sure, stumbling on it was a bit eerie. The design felt emphatically out of place, like encountering a working Ferris wheel in the middle of a desert, running but with no one riding or operating the attraction. A sort of daydream come to life. The type of thing that causes your brain to throb because the circumstances defiantly lack a readily accessible explanation. An incongruence that tickles and lacerates the psyche to the point of honest physical discomfort. I could understand Sam needing time to swallow the uncanniness of this guerrilla installation. At the same time, my grace was running out. I sensed impatience bubbling in my chest, like heartburn once again. I watched as he took off his Phillies cap and contemplatively scratched his head, letting short, dirty blonde curls loose. Seeing these familiar mannerisms, I remembered that, despite our growing friction, I loved him, and we'd been a couple for many years. We started dating not long after he and his friends had denounced the Giants' stairs as too infantile and beneath their maturing sensibilities. But we had become distant, not physically, but mentally. It didn't feel like we had anything to talk about anymore. This hike was one of a series of exercises meant to rekindle something between us, but like many before, it was proving to have the opposite effect. It makes me feel, honestly, Nora, it makes me feel really uncomfortable. Can we start walking back? Sam muttered, practically whimpering. I purposely ignored the second part, instead asking, "What about it makes you uncomfortable?" And you asked me what I think it means, but what do you think it means? In the past few months, Sam had become closed off, seemingly dead to the world. I recognized that the mosaic was undeniably abstract, making it difficult to interpret, but that's also what made it intriguing and worth dissecting. I just wanted him to show me he was willing to engage with something outside his own head. The background was primarily an inky and vacant black, split in two by a faint, earthy bronze diagonal line that spanned from the bottom left-hand corner to the upper right-hand corner, subdividing the piece into a left and a right triangle. My eyes were first drawn to the celestial body in the left triangle because of the inherent action transpiring in that subsection. A planet, ashen like Saturn but without the rings, was in the process of being skewered by a gigantic serpentine creature. The creature came up from behind the planet, briefly disappeared, and then triumphantly reappeared by burrowing through the helpless star. As the creature erupted through, it seemed as if it started to coil back in the opposite direction to meet its tail. As I more thoroughly inspected the creature, I noticed smaller details, such as the many legs jutting off the sides of its convulsing torso, all the way from head to tail. The distribution of wriggling legs was disturbingly unorganized. A few legs here and few legs there, etc. Because of this detail, the creature took on the appearance of a tawny-colored centipede of extraterrestrial proportions. In comparison, the right triangle was much more straightforward. It depicted a moon shining a cylinder of light on the cosmic pageantry playing itself out in the left triangle, like a stage light illuminating the focal point of a show. As its moon rays trickled over the dividing diagonal line, the coppery shading of the boundary became thicker and more deliberate, extending a little into each triangle as well. From my perspective, this grand tableau was a play on the legend of Ouroboros, the snake god that ate its own tail. In ancient cultures, the snake symbolized rebirth, a cycle of life and death. More recently, however, philosophical interpretations of the viper have become a bit nihilistic. Instead of an avatar of rebirth, the snake began representing humanity's inescapably self-defeating nature, always eating itself in the pursuit of living. I believe that's what the mosaic was attempting to depict, a parable, or maybe a tribute, to our inherent predilection for self-destruction. After a minute of deafening silence, Sam finally inhaled, preparing to say something. Hope nestled into my heart, crackling like tiny embers. Those embers quickly cooled when he sputtered out an answer. I think it's a warning. I paused and waited for more, a further explanation of what he meant by the piece being a warning, or maybe more elaboration on why it made him uncomfortable. Disappointingly, Sam had nothing additional to give. In a huff, I dug furiously into my backpack and pulled out my Polaroid camera. When Sam observed that I was carefully stepping backwards to get the entire piece into frame, he pleaded with me not to take a picture. But my body was already in motion. He stood behind me as the device snapped, flashed, and ejected a developing photo of the mural. I swung it up and down vigorously in the air for a few seconds, and then I jammed it into his coat pocket with excessive force. "Kindly notify me once you have something better," I hissed, starting to wander back the way we'd arrived as I said it. Once I heard the clap of his boots following me, I didn't bother to turn around. April 25th, 1972. Sam. What about it makes you uncomfortable? And you ask me what I think it means. But what do you think it means? Nora's question had immobilized me with an unfortunately familiar fear. No matter how desperately I searched, I couldn't seem to find an answer worthy of the query stockpiled in my head. Not only that, but mounting anxiety caused any emerging thought to lose momentum, glaciating to the point where I had forgotten what the intended trajectory was for the thought in the first place. The last handful of months were littered with moments like these. I know Nora wanted more from me. She wanted me to articulate something authentic and genuine, but I couldn't find that part of myself anymore. It didn't help that she made me feel like I was being tested. Every visit to the gallery eventually mutated into a pop quiz, where subjective questions, at least according to Nora, had objectively correct and incorrect answers. Having failed each and every quiz in recent memory, I was now thoroughly intimidated about submitting any answer to her at all. But I always wanted to make an attempt, hoping to be awarded some amount of credit for trying. To that end, I tried to focus on the picture in front of me. I don't know what she was so dazzled by. There wasn't much to interpret and analyze from where I stood. In the top right-hand corner, there was a hazy moon with a pale complexion shining down into the rest of the illustration, but that was the only identifiable object I could see in the mural. The remainder of the picture was chaos, a frenetic splattering of dark reds and browns, accented randomly by swirls of pine green. I thought maybe I could appreciate one small eye, with what looked like a smile underneath it at the very bottom of the piece, but it was hard to say anything for certain. It was just a lawless mess of color, excluding the solitary moon. That being said, it did stir something in me. I felt a discomfort, a pressure, or maybe a repulsion. Like the mural and I were two positive ends of a magnet being forced together. An invisible obstacle seemed to push back against me when I tried to connect with the image. It felt like we shouldn't be here, which is why I had taken the time to advocate for us kindly fucking off before this artistic interrogation. I hesitated, a knot of worry tightening in my stomach. I wanted to be right. I wanted to give Nora what she was looking for. More than both goals, however, I didn't want to say anything wrong. This forced a vague, pithy answer from me. The more nebulous my response, I figured, the more I would be able to further calibrate the response based on how she reacted to the initial statement. Despite all the layers of context buried within, I meant what I said. I think it's a warning. May 2nd, 1972. Sam. Nora, just drop it. Please, drop it, I fumed, letting my spoon fall and clatter around in my cereal bowl as the words left my mouth, sonically accenting my exasperation. We hadn't discussed the mural since we left the giant's stairs. Instead, we had a speechless car ride home, which foreshadowed many additional speechless interactions in the coming few days. Neither of us had the bravery or the force of will to address the dysfunction. Instead, we just lived around it. That was until Nora elected to demolish the floodgates. You saw nothing? No centipede? No moon? No Ouroboros? It was a completely bewitching piece of art, masterful in its conception, and all you could feel was uncomfortable, she bellowed, standing over me and our kitchen table, gesticulating wildly as she spoke. I felt my heart vibrating with adrenaline in my throat. I was never very compatible with anger. It caused my body to shake and quaver, like I was filled to the brim with electricity that didn't have a release mechanism. So instead, the energy buzzed around my nervous system indefinitely. I saw a moon, and I saw some colors, I muttered through clenched teeth. That's it. At an unreconcilable standstill in the argument, instead of talking, we decided instead to leer angrily into each other's eyes, which amounted to a very daft and worthless game of chicken. We were waiting to see who would look away and break contact first. In a flash, Nora's expression transfigured from irritation to one of insight and recollection. She abandoned the staring contest, pacing away into the mudroom. When she got there, Nora started digging through our winter gear. Having retrieved the coat I was wearing on our hike, she returned to the table, unzipping the pockets to find the forgotten Polaroid, which I had deliberately sequestered and not reviewed after leaving the woods. She brought the picture close to her face, and I braced myself for the potential verbal whirlwind that I expected was forthcoming. Instead, Nora tilted her head in bewilderment, flummoxed to where she had lost all forward momentum in the confrontation. With the color draining from her face, she handed me the Polaroid. The picture showed both of us standing against the stone wall, adjacent to where I suppose the mural should have been, even though I had been behind her when the flash went off. We were smiling, my arm around Nora, with both of us positioned in the bottom corner of the frame. The picture contained a certain touristy quality. It looked like it was meant to capture some nostalgic shot of Nora and I dwarfed by a larger-than-life monument that we had encountered abroad. But the wall was empty. The photographer framed the Polaroid to include a significant portion of the cliff face as if the mural were there, but it looked as if someone had surgically excised it from the photo. Neither of us possessed the courage to even speculate about how we were both in the photo, or who had been operating the camera. May 8th, 1972. Nora. I loomed over the bed like the shadow of a tidal wave over a coastal village, quietly scowling at my sleeping partner. How could he sleep? How could he close his eyes for more than a few seconds? I hadn't slept since seeing the Polaroid. Not a meaningful amount anyway. Clutching the photo in my left hand, I tried to steady my breathing, which had a new habit of becoming alarmingly irregular whenever I thought too hard about the mural. I must have overlooked something. I turned around to exit the bedroom, gliding down the hall and into my office. Flicking on a desk light, I sat down and carefully placed the Polaroid on the otherwise empty work surface. In a methodical fashion, I studied every single centimeter of the photo, which had become progressively creased and misshapen since I had pilfered it from the trash can in the dead of night. Sam had thrown it out. He had made me watch him dispose of it, said we needed to put it behind us, that it didn't matter, that it didn't need to be explained. What it must be like to be cradled to sleep by such a vapid, unthinking bliss. My pang of jealousy was interrupted when I noticed something, a peculiarity in the top right-hand corner of the Polaroid. I had creased the photo so thoroughly that a tiny frayed and upturned edge appeared, like the small separation you have to create between the layers of a plastic trash bag before you can shake it out the inside. I cautiously dug under that slit with the side of a nickel. As I pushed diagonally towards the other corner, the photo of Sam and me, standing in front of an empty wall, peeled off to reveal a second photo concealed beneath it. Ecstasy spilled generously into my veins, relaxing the vice grip that the original Polaroid had been holding me in. It finally made sense. May 8th, 1972. Sam, wake up. It all makes so much fucking sense now. I can't believe I didn't understand before. Rubbing sleep from my eyes, I slowly adjusted to the scene in front of me. Nora was physically walking around on our bed, jumping and hopping over me. She oozed pure, uncontainable excitement, like a toddler who had just seen snow for the first time. But Nora's face told an altogether different story. Her eyes were distressingly bloodshot from her sleep deprivation, reduced to a tangle of flaming capillaries zigzagging manically through her white conjunctiva. I couldn't comprehend what exactly she was trying to tell me, between the run-on sentences and intermittent cackling laughter. Her mouth was contorted into a toothy, rapturous grin while she spoke, releasing minuscule raindrops of spittle onto her immediate surroundings every 10 words or so. At first, I was simply concerned and exhausted, and I languidly turned over to power on the lamp on my nightstand. That concern evolved into terror as the light reflected off the kitchen knife in her left hand and back at me. "Come on now. Up, up, up. I need you to show me to the giant stairs. Can't get there myself, don't know exactly how to get there, Nora declared. "I figured it out. Look at what I found under the Polaroid. A second photo, the real meaning hiding under the fake one." She shoved the photo, the one I was sure I had disposed of, into my face so emphatically that she overshot the mark, punching me in the nose because of her over-animation. I swallowed the pain and gently pulled her hand back by her wrist, as she was looking out the window towards the car and unaware that she was holding the picture too close for me to even view. The Polaroid was weathered nearly beyond recognition. I could barely appreciate the picture anymore. Scratches covered the Polaroid. It looked as if a feral monkey had spent hours dragging a house key across the zinc paper. Sure, as hell didn't see any second image. Nora gaped at me for recognition of her findings, unblinking. As the hooks of her grin slowly started to melt downwards into the beginning of a frown, my gaze went from Nora to the knife in her hand, and then back to her. I knew I had to give her the reaction she was looking for. "Yes, of course. I see it now. I really do." Her fiendish smile reappeared. "Great. Let's hop in the car and go look for ourselves, though." Nora shot up, left the bedroom, and started walking down the hallway. Before she reached the banister of our stairs, her head swiveled back to see what I was doing, wanting to determine the precise nature of the delay. Her grin melted again. I shot out of bed, trying to reciprocate at least a small fraction of her enthusiasm. "Right behind you. May 8th, 1972. Sam." We arrived at the giant steps 40 minutes later. In that entire time, Nora had not let me out of her sight. I had tried to pick up the house phone while she looked semi-distracted. Somehow, though, she placed the knife tip against my side and inches away from excavating my flank before I could even dial the second 9. Nora leisurely twisted the apex of the blade, causing hot blood to trickle down my side. After a menacingly delayed pause, she simply said, "Don't." My failed attempt at calling the police had transiently soured her mood. Nora remained vigilant and tight-lipped, at least until our feet landed on the rock of the last stair. Then her disconcerting giddiness resumed at its previous intensity. We had left the car at about 4:30 a.m., so I estimated it was almost 5 a.m. at this point. Nearly sunup, but no light had started splashing over the horizon yet. I did my absolute best not to panic, with waxing and waning success. My hands were slick with sweat, so in an effort to moderate my panic, I put my focus solely on maintaining my grip on the handle of the large camping flashlight. Abruptly, Nora squeezed the hand she had been resting on my right shoulder. She had positioned herself behind me, knife to the small of my back, as I guided her back to the giant's stairs. In an attempt to decipher her signal correctly, I halted my movement, which caused the knife to tortuously gouge the tissue above my tailbone as Nora continued to move forward. She did not notice the injury, as she was too busy making her way in front of me with a familiar, schizophrenic grin plastered on her face. The puncture to my back was much deeper than the slight cut she had previously made on my flank, and I struggled not to buckle over from pain and nausea. I put one hand on each of my knees and wretched. When I looked up, Nora was a few feet in front of me, and she had placed both her hands over her mouth, seemingly to try to contain her laughter and excitement. She nearly skewered herself, still absent-mindedly holding the blood-soaked knife in her left hand when she brought her hands up to her head. "Ta-da!" she yelled triumphantly, gesturing for me to point the flashlight towards the cliff face. As the light hit the wall, I saw nothing. Blank, empty, worthless stone, and I was just so tired of pretending. "Nora, I don't see a goddamned thing," I screamed, with such a frustrated, reckless abandon that I strained my vocal cords, causing an additional searing pain to manifest in my throat. She thought for a few seconds as the echoes of my scream died out in the surrounding forest, putting one finger to her lip and tilting her head as if she were earnestly trying to troubleshoot the situation. No moon? No centipede plunging through a ringless Saturn? No Ouroboros? I shook my head from my bent-over position, letting a few tears finally fall silently from my eyes to the ground. "Oh, I know," she remarked, dropping the knife mindlessly as she did. She turned around and cavorted her way to the edge of the stair, blissfully disconnected from the abject horror of it all. Nora pranced so carelessly that I thought she was going to skip right off the platform, not actually falling until she realized there was no longer ground underneath her, like a Looney Tunes character. But she stopped just shy of the brink and turned around to face me. "Okay, push me," she proclaimed, still sporting that same grin. "Push you." "Nora, what the fuck are you saying?" I responded, my voice rough and craggy from the strain. At that pivotal moment, I almost ran. She had dropped the knife and had created distance between the two of us. The opportunity was there. But I loved her. I think I loved her, at least at that moment. "Sam, for once in your life, have some courage and push me." Despite the harsh words, her smile hadn't changed. "Sam, for the love of God, push me, you fucking coward," she cooed while wagging an index finger at me, her smile somehow growing larger. In an unforeseeable rupture, the now cataclysmic accumulation of electricity in my body ultimately found a channel to escape and release. Leaning low, I ran at Nora, my right shoulder aimed to hit her sternum. I did not see her fall. I only heard the fleshy sound of Nora careening into the earth, and then I heard nothing. As I turned away from the edge, finally having the space to let nausea become emesis and misery become weeping, the flashlight turned as well, causing me to notice something had revealed itself on the initially vacant stone wall. An immaculately designed chalk mural, which had not been there seconds before. I stifled briny tears and studied the image. As I stared, eyes wide with a combination of shell shock and curiosity, I pivoted my flashlight over the cliff to visualize Nora's body, then back at the mural, and then back at Nora's body. Her voice started reverberating against the inside of my skull, quietly at first, but it wasn't long before Nora's words grew into a veritable orchestra of prophetic chimes that rung louder and fiercer with each passing moment. I figured it out. Look at what I found under the Polaroid. A second photo, the real meaning hiding under the fake one. I saw the planet, the piercing centipede, and the shining moonlight. And as I moved to illuminate Nora's face-up corpse with the flashlight, I saw one of the jagged roots from the nearby upturned tree had perforated the back of her skull on the way down, causing a tawny, decaying branch to wriggle through and jut out the left side of her forehead, obliterating her left eye, all of it illuminated by my flashlight from 20 feet above. I think I get it. Or I at least saw it how Nora had described countless times. My flashlight was the moon, and the bronze diagonal line was the cliff's edge. Her head was the ashen planet, and the piercing centipede was the jagged root. And she had died to make me understand. The whole point of me understanding was so we could be more connected. In that sense, Nora had succeeded. Understanding did make me feel connected to her. Unfortunately, we now found ourselves separated by a considerable amount of spiritual distance, unable to enjoy our revitalized connection. The cost for me understanding, I suppose. Ouroboros. The mural was sort of beautiful, or at least captivating. You could really lose yourself in the colors and the images. They were violently alive, like childbirth or surgery. In a state not unlike sleepwalking, my feet guided me to the car to retrieve Nora's Polaroid camera and then back to the mural. Carefully, I snapped a photo of the newly mesmerizing display. Peering over the last stair, I could see Nora laid still, with the rising dawn now illuminating her cadaver. Yellow light revealed that her dying grin had become painted onto her in death. I took the time to study the expression. It was intricate. The nuances were almost hypnotic. Reflexively, I mirrored her grin, painting it on myself in solidarity, a fake expression that hid the real one underneath. Waving the Polaroid, I started towards the hill that led down to the lake and to Nora. Whatever developed, we could look at it together. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more thrilling horror stories like these. Also, share your thoughts on the story in the comments section below. If you want me to feature your own story on this channel, you are most welcome. Send your story to the email provided in the description below.